All right, and it's now just around 10 minutes to 8 o'clock, and it's time for us to have another discussion here on alternative care. And I'll start by, first of all, introducing the panel that we have, and I'll start with my extreme left, where we have Miriam Musyoka, who's from SOS Children's Village, Kenya Family-Based Care Program Manager. Thank you for joining us. We're also joined by Protest Lumiti, who is Children's Department Alternative Care. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, we have Siprosa Rabach, who's Undugu Society Kenya. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, alternative care, of course, for us as a community and as a society, is not something that is too strange. And I look at this from our cultural background. Majority of us, maybe even if we checked a sample here, you'll find we either support a relative somewhere or we live with one. Maybe they finish their exams, and while they're waiting to be admitted wherever, we keep them. So it's not something that is new. But maybe from your perspective, let me start with you, Siprosa. Alternative care. When you talk about alternative care, what exactly are we projecting to?
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers. Alternative care is a care option that is available for children without parents. And going back to our roots as Africans, children belong to the community and families. So when a child loses a parent, then there are other alternatives that are provided for to enable this child to belong and to grow within the family. And there are a number of alternative care options in Kenya that probably people are not aware of. We have options that really enables children to grow up and live within their family without necessarily being separated from their family situations.
All right, Protest, maybe you can just update us on some of those alternatives that are there, because like one I've mentioned is basically just as a community how we take up our relatives' children, but there are other alternatives that are there.
Thank you very much. We have several alternative care in our community. Like, for example, kinship. For many years, we have taken on children of our brothers, our sisters, when they die and the children are left without any care. We take them on, only that we didn't have the term kinship. That's an alternative care. There is also what we call foster care. And foster care is any child who is taken out of the parental care for an overnight or 1 year or 3 months by someone else to foster. There is also guardianship, which is basically a legal or non-legal, in a sense that this child is placed with another person on a legal basis for a period of time, or to travel outside the country, or in a CCI, in a children's home. So those are the alternatives that we have at the moment.
Okay, and we'll delve more into some of those alternatives and how people can also participate. But let me come to you, Miriam. Tell us a little bit about SOS, because SOS does provide some alternatives.
Okay, SOS Children's Villages basically respond to children who have inadequate parental care from two aspects. Children who have lost parental care is one category. Then we have children who are at risk of losing parental care. So basically we have two programs on how we respond to the children without adequate parental care. For the ones who have lost parental care, we actually enroll them into the children's villages across the locations where we are operating. And basically, because they have lost parental care, we provide a care for these children whereby they have a mother or a caregiver who provides care and protection in a family house setting. And because we can't bring every child basically into the children's villages, we also have another program whereby we reach to approximately 10,000 children in the community. We place them under caregivers. Or if the family is already existing, for example, like in kinship setup, the child is meant to remain actually in kinship setting, and we do strengthening of that family, so that child is not going to fall out of that care system. So basically our response is based on two aspects, and also we have advocacy and partnership.
Okay, Protest, coming to you, and the question of now children's villages, how does that affect the child, given that it's somewhat not an ideal situation? You know, you'd expect an ideal situation is where you have what we'd call the nucleus family, where you have father, mother, and a family setup. But now, here you have children being taken care of by several adults, but not an ideal setup. How does that affect the child?
In normal circumstances in Kenya, we have what we call CCIs, charitable children's institutions and villages, like Miriam has said. Children are placed there by either because of the situation they have come from, either they have lost their parents are maybe in jail, and they are orphaned. So they are placed in children's homes. It's the last resort. It's actually supposed to be the last resort in normal circumstance. But commonly known in Kenya, any child who is found on a street or found abandoned, people would say, let us take this child to a children's home. Is it ideal or not? I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it provides an immediate alternative care for this child who is abandoned, who needs care. It's not ideal because it's an institution. It's not necessarily a home, a nuclear home. And that's why we are advocating for alternative care in families, where the child will grow up naturally, where the child will have a parent figure whom he or she will relate to as a parent.
All right, and coming to you, Siprosa, the question of having that balance for the child, because at the end of the day, I would look at the villages and the CICs as a temporary holding place, as it were, for that child.
Yes.
But are we able now to move them from that environment and then give them a more stable environment?
For me, the ideal is to let children grow up within families and communities. Because when we provide opportunity for families or children to grow in families and communities, it gives them a sense of belonging. And even if we trace our roots as Africans, children belong to the communities. And that is why we are coming out strongly to say that whatever circumstances children may find themselves in, it is important that we provide that enabling environment. And there are circumstances that may probably push children out of their family situation. But that should be temporary. Let us deal with the root causes to prevent unnecessary separation of children from families and build on the resilience of families in Kenya today to be able to take care of their children within a community. Because we believe that if children are given the opportunity to grow up in a family setup, then they gain a lot. It is also cost effective, it is cheaper, because if you separate children from their families and take them away, I know for many years, people used to take children away from families because they needed to be provided with basic needs. Probably their parents are passed away and they need to go and get education away from home. But how long will these children stay away from home? Eventually, these children want to come back and trace their roots back to their communities. And that is why, as Ndugu Society of Kenya, an organization that has been working with children who are living and working on the street, we say that institutional care should be temporary, a temporary place of safety where children are kept for a very short period of time. But ultimately, our goal is to rescue, rehabilitate, and reintegrate children to live within a family setup.
And Miriam, coming to you, do you find that possibly you have cultural barriers that you have to overcome? And I'll give an example. We have families that maybe are not able to have children naturally. And an adoption would be an alternative to offer care, and a stable family for this. But do you find that culturally, maybe that is something that is not accepted yet?
Yeah, I want to say basically alternative care options, when it comes to adoption, basically, it is not so much appreciated by the community. But I want to say it is because of lack of information, a lack of creation of awareness, basically. Because at the end of the day, when a child is placed in a care option, not only about adoption, even in foster, they are likely to face stigmatization from the community. So basically, it calls us practitioners who are in this business of care, basically, to raise awareness or now basically to look at a child as a child, regardless of the care option they are placed into. So I will say stigmatization, yes, it is there, but we are in the process of creating awareness so that basically these children, they can be provided with an alternative care option to stay in, because not every child who can actually stay in ideal family setup, maybe a nuclear family. The other children who don't have that kind of a support. So basically, where do we put them? We have to embrace all these other care options, and it's calls upon all of us to create awareness, including media, to not to stigmatize children who are placed basically in those care options, and that we are in the business of doing that.
Okay, Protas, what is the process of adoption? If somebody was watching this show and maybe felt, maybe I'd like to participate and, help out, what is, very generally, I know it might be a very long, laborious process, but if you broke it down, what does one need to do?
One, adoption is simple, only that we don't have that knowledge of going about it. One, the intention is to be expressed by the parent who wants to adopt. He will have to express that through an adoption agency or a children's officer to say, I want to adopt a child. And the children's officer will refer them to adoption agency, which are known in Kenya. There are 5 of them, in fact 6 of them. And they will invite the parent to their assessment, and it's very simple. You'll be asked a few questions. Why do you want to adopt? What's the intention? They do assessment. And then they take records of that particular family, and they match the parent with a particular child who has already been declared free for adoption. In normal circumstances, adoption agencies in Kenya, the 5 of them, would have a database of children who need to be adopted. So they'll already know. Once you walk into their office or you tell a children's officer that I want to adopt a child, you conduct them. They will say, yes, we have children who are actually in need of parents. And they will match you with a child. Within a few months, you'll have to be called for a bonding period where you'll take the child either from a children's home or from where the child is placed temporarily. And you take the child for 3 months, which we call bonding period. And during bonding period, a social worker will visit you to assess your background to see that the child is bonding very well with you. After those 3 months, you actually call for a court to order the declaration of adoption. That's the only time that takes a period of nearly 6 months, sometimes 9 months. But to some, it has taken long, and that's why people find it very difficult. But it's a simple process which should take about 9 months, which is a normal period of pregnancy. If a mother is pregnant, it's 9 months, isn't it? But the longer it is because of the legal
the cost process and the legal procedure.
There is no cost. There is a minimal cost, just the legal paperwork, which is very minimal. It's not a lot of money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ciprosa, are there instances where you have somebody who's adopted and maybe 2 years down the road they feel this was not the right decision I made and I want to rescind? Is that an option?
Adoption is permanent. Adoption is permanent, and that's why we are saying that we have a number of alternatives, because the moment you come out and decide that you want to adopt, you take full responsibility over that child. And, as a country, I think we need to come out and, sensitize the citizens of Kenya to understand that adoption, you have not only the legal custody, but it is permanent. It cannot be reversed. But there are instances where one of the most critical things that needs to be looked into is the best interest of the child. Just like in any other family, there are instances where a child can be removed from a family setup because of the situation or the circumstances, but that has to be temporarily. Let me give you an example. We have instances where there's violence in a family, and then the family environment is not really stable. Then it is the responsibility of the government to remove the child temporarily, but the ultimate goal of the government is to ensure that the issues that the family is dealing with are actually addressed to ensure that the child can be reintegrated back to live with this family. So, for example, if an adoptive parent probably has a problem, because sometimes we have challenges in families, and you feel like, okay, I have a problem with my child. Seek help, seek counseling. There's support out there, but adoption is permanent.
It's permanent.
Yes.
All right, we'll need to have our closing comments. So I'll start with you, Miriam, on what you'd like the public generally to know when it comes to these alternative care options.
Okay, I will close by saying basically we have a variety of options whereby we can place children, not only in the charitable children institutions. We have options like kinship, foster, adoption, guardianship. And in terms of now preparing children from the CCA back to the communities, there's need to do assessment of every stakeholder, be it the child, be it the families of origin, be it the caregivers who are taking care of this child. So that basically we're not going to harm the child in the process of reintegration is very important. We do adequate preparation to avoid fallback of the child.
All right. Protest, your closing comments, and maybe for somebody, is it an option to support a child who is in a foster care, but without necessarily taking them into your home?
Yes, we would say it's much easier for you to foster a child. It's simple, especially children who are in CCIs. You can actually approach the CCI and take a child for foster care, which is temporarily between you and the manager of the home or the children's department. They will give you a child for foster care for a period of time. It's possible, it's affordable, it's cheaper. In terms of my parting shot, in terms of adoption, I would suggest that members of the community to really reach out to take on a child in their family.
All right.
It's possible to take on an extra child without any cost.
And I'm sure we've had very many success stories of people who've not regretted doing that.
Exactly.
All right, Siprose, your closing comments.
Thank you very much. I want to call on viewers and to tell them that children bring a lot of joy in our lives. Let us open our hearts, our doors, our homes to take in children, because children don't belong to institutions. Children belong to families, and we believe that there are children out there who are looking for love. So as a country, we will actually make a lot of gains if we open our hearts and our doors to take in children. We really don't need to have our children living in institutions for years, because these are the future of our nation. So Kenyans, come out and take in a child through the many care options that are available. It's not about the financial means, but it's about the love that the children are seeking. So I call on all Kenyans to open their hearts and their doors to take in children into family homes and their communities, and to retrace back their roots, because as Africans, we were actually wired to take care of our children. We have a collective responsibility to prevent unnecessary separation of children from families. So come together, let's all come together and bring up children in a family setup.
Thank you very much. That's the Prosa Rabach, Undugu Society of Kenya. We also had Miriam Musyoka, SOS Children's Village, Kenya Family-Based Care Program Manager. And last but not least, Protest Lumiti, who's a Children Department Alternative Care. Thank you for joining us this morning. And just to use your words, Siprosa, as Africans, we are mandated to take care of our children and adopt. And let me now hand over to a child who I've had to adopt right here in the studio. That's Zinzi Kibiko to give us some stories. Making headlines, Zinzi.